Author of Hidden History, Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776 to 1963, and Survival of the Richest, Donald Jeffries separates the real from the unreal. Fact from fiction. Fact from fiction. Reverse engineering our manufactured reality. And now, from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., this is I Protest with Donald Jeffries.
And welcome to I Protest. It's Donald Jeffries here with you. We come to you every Friday, as the man says, from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C. at 5 p.m. Eastern. We're doing another, we've done several of these shows because I think that January 6th is one of the biggest issues in this country today, and it's indicative of the collapse that this country is experiencing, and to honor all the political prisoners that are still there in D.C. jail 3 years later, haven't been denied all due process. So we're having as many people as we can. We had Ashley Babbitt's mom on for a second time a few weeks ago. We have three guests. Hope we're going to have a third guest. Eric Clark has been on the show before, and he's suing Ray Epps. So I hope he comes on, and we're waiting for him. But in the meantime, we have Tim Rivers, who has produced an explosive new documentary. January 6th is here, The American Gulag Chronicles. And then we also have James Beeks, who is a Broadway star, and we're going to ask how he found his way to January 6th as well. And so these guys are going to, talk about their experiences, and so my audience can get a feel for, as if they didn't already know, how many people this has affected, and the kind of we'll talk about what possible punishments they might face. We talked to a guy a couple weeks ago again that was inside the Capitol for 36 seconds, and I think he got 60 days, but he fared much better than a lot of them. So anyhow, welcome to the show, guys. Tim, I guess we'll go first with you and talk about how you got to be in Washington, D.C. on that infamous January 6th, and then we'll definitely discuss how your documentary came about.
Well, actually, I was not there on January 6th. I'm actually the voice of the guys in the Gulag.
Oh, okay, great. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We started writing to these guys right after everything started gelling together. We could tell that there was going to be a massive sweep, and they weren't going to let up. We connected these guys together through something called the Patriot Mail Project, where just ordinary Americans can find where they're hiding these guys, get their addresses, and write them letters of support, even get involved with their support. And through that, I got a letter back from a gentleman by the name of Jeff McKellip, a retired Ranger and Green Beret, 3 times Bronze Star decorated for valor, served in all the places you and I have heard about in the Gulf Wars. And his letter just drove me into this with a vengeance. I was retired and really not heavily politically involved. I mean, I was involved in election integrity afterwards, but I had no idea of how rapidly we could lose control of justice in America until I started reading these guys' letters. And they were so poignant and so full of information that was contrary to the narrative. We began publishing them out on Telegram and on other platforms. And now we're, of course, on the web, and we're pretty much saturated the platforms. And these letters, as people started reading the ones we were posting, they went, well, wait, I got one too. And they started sending them in, and it became a flood. And what was in these letters, well, I don't want to give it away, but I'll give you a website where you can read like 14 pages of the first book.
Please.
Read a few of them yourself, and you'll get a feel for what it's like to be a J6 prisoner and to be persecuted for something that is patriotic. And so these letters started coming in heavily. We had to form another channel called American Gulag Chronicles, a little nod to Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, because what was happening to these guys and gals was exactly what Alexander was trying to warn us about, what he had gone through, what he experienced in the gulags of Stalinist Russia. And the warnings that he had been giving us in 1973, evidently we weren't listening very closely. I read the book 3 times, but I don't know how I could have stopped this. But I do know that it's time to stop this. And their letters are the message to America. It's so strange. Don, I see your next book, I think, down something about the memory hole of America. That's what's happening.
Yes,
these guys are going down the memory hole. They're trying to relate to you exactly what happened to that day. I mean, I could talk about it, but wouldn't you rather hear it from the person who was there? Just like, you're having people on here.
Certainly. And that's, did Eric, when you pinged Eric, did he say he's coming on, or?
I did. I hit him both ways. I hit him on the, on text, and I hit him on Telegram.
Okay.
So
you probably have more of a hotline than I do. Okay. Well, hopefully he makes it, but, so we'll come back to you, because we're going to talk about more about the documentary thing. So, James, I'm assuming you were there on January 6th, correct?
Yeah, I was there. My journey started June 2nd, 2020, when David Dorn was killed, a black ex-police officer who got killed during the Summer of Love riots.
Right. I remember, yeah.
And he, was simply trying to protect his property. And I saw our nation get burned to the ground by the left. And I said, if I was able to help in that situation, I would go in and be a peacekeeper. And when then President Trump asked to come to January 6th, I heeded the call, and I wanted to go as a peacekeeper. So I signed up for the Oath Keepers a couple of weeks before. And I didn't know anybody there, because we know in crowds like this, we saw throughout all the summer, especially after, a lot of those Trump rallies and stuff, that they would go particularly after older people, elderly people. These, cowards would go after them and attack people. And, I know self-defense, I know how to, fight and protect others. So I wanted to go and be that on January 6th. And so I saw the Oath Keepers, and I was part of that infamous military stack that they kept playing over and over again. And we were pushed inside by the force of the crowd and some suspicious actors who were still not on the FBI wanted list. And I was part of the group that, protected Officer Dunn from the rowdy people, and we got him back to his unit. As soon as we got him back, a crowd of people came and crushed us against the cops. And I got stuck and actually got my arm injured from that. And I'm actually part of the lawsuit, the civil lawsuit that's going on.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about it. Tony, Eric has messaged me on Twitter and said he never got the link. Tony, I hope can you check and make sure that it went or didn't get back delivered to the email I gave you? Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
James. Yeah.
So then they dispersed us with that chemical spray, and I was only there for about 23 minutes, and then after that we went out and we're buffers between the cops and the rowdy crowd. I thought that was being there for security and to help and to de-escalate any sort of situation. But then I was, after the event, went home and went back on tour. I was in the 50th anniversary of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Jesus Christ Superstar and the starring role of Judas. And when I was on tour, I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on November 23rd. My former employer, conspired with the FBI to have me arrested. And then they put out a press release. It was big news all over you look through. It was November of 2021. And it was during the time of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, and you would notice that they were talking about my case more so than they were talking about the Ghislaine Maxwell, and I saw that. But then I laid in wait because they forced a public pretender on me, and for a year and a half they kept delaying, which was kind of good in a way. But and I actually fired the public pretender, and I presented my own action, or in legalese term, I represented myself, and took it to trial, and I won. Got fully acquitted in a stipulated bench trial. I'm one of the only cases that's been.
Oh, you are magic. Are you the one that the judge saw the video of the cops waving people inside and dismissed the trial? I still want to find out who that guy was.
No, that was Matthew Martin.
Okay. Well, he's the luckiest one of you all because he had the only honest judge, apparently.
Well, I'm the second because I got fully acquitted.
That's incredible. How do you think? I mean, so you had a jury. The jury acquitted you? I'm shocked. I really am.
No. It was a stipulated bench trial.
Okay.
And I fought, without an attorney,
And without an attorney too. Wow.
with my paperwork. And that's what I've been trying to get people to understand, my strategy, how I did this through common law and through trust law. And so I forced them into a stipulated bench trial, and we agreed to go with after 2 charges. And if they proved that I intently and knowingly committed these alleged crimes that they charged me with, whether the judge rendered a verdict of guilty or not guilty, they would drop the rest of the charges, and that's how I won.
Well, what were the charges? Because it just seems like this was the deck was stacked against everybody. They just came up with these either trespassing, or I don't think they actually charged anybody.
Yeah, I had
insurrection.
No, they never charge anybody with insurrection, and it's shameful that they keep calling it an insurrection.
Yeah. Yes.
I was charged with the 1512, the aiding and abetting, with rowdy cops, the stopping the cops. So the charges that I went with the stipulated bench trial was the 1512 obstruction of Congress and stopping the police from their duties. And the other charges, the other 4, I guess, were misdemeanors. So I had 6. And so, like I said, we went after those 2 charges, and then the rest were dropped. So I was completely acquitted.
Well, where was this courtroom, and who was the judge? Because I'd like to have the judge's name known, because it's very rare to have any judge with common sense these days. So what judge acquitted?
I was shocked because this was Maida. This was the one who was very harsh on the Oath Keepers. I was a whole part of the Oath Keepers.
Wow.
So it's pretty miraculous that a lot of people don't know that I'm a winner. And even the J6 committee, they're surprised that there is a winner here, and I'm here to spread there is hope, and I would like for people to look at the precedent that I've set based on my paperwork that I filed onto the court.
Well, what do you think was special about what you did? Because as I think the other defendants have tried. What did you do differently, you think, than that the others didn't do?
Well, like I said, my paperwork. It's about paperwork, and you win court cases through paperwork. And I put them in an administrative process through common law and through trust law. And the language that I used in my paperwork, they cannot take to the appellate court nor the Supreme Court, and they had to find a way to get out of it. So,
definitely got to share that, brother.
Yeah, because this is some magical paperwork. Because if the video doesn't work of the cops waving people inside, or the fact there's Eric Clark.
Here's the thing. Hey man, here's the brother. Here's the good. Hey James. Hey, what's up, man? Here's the thing. Like when I won, I got a lot of pushback because I got blamed. I got blamed for winning because of my skin. And God, whose dog is that? Somebody's. If you can hear me.
It's not mine, I don't think, is it?
I think that's Eric's. Eric, can you just mute out while he's talking for a minute?
Yeah.
Cool beans.
Yeah. So I got blamed for winning because I was a Fed, or because of the color of my skin, and nobody even looked at the merits of my case to go and study what I've done. And it's just frustrating to me that, a lot of people don't know. So I'm trying to get the word out and trying to get my story out. I'm writing a book about my story, and I some information on helping me, finish my book, to tell my story and to be an inspiration for others out there to have.
You are an inspiration. I hope, like Tim said, I hope maybe you can get in touch with some of these others and maybe the copy what you did. I don't know, because if you came before the same hard ass judge that came through some of these other penalties, amazing. I want to go to Eric Clark. Eric's been on the show once before, a while back, and good to see you, Eric. So tell us now, give us again what your experience was. You were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, and then we'll talk about the lawsuit against Ray Epps. But what happened that day when you were in D.C.?
So from my perspective, I didn't witness any violence. I watched the Trump speech. I walked down to the Capitol, and in my mind, to see more speeches, right? And when I arrived, I was able to walk all the way up to the very front of the Capitol steps amidst this huge crowd that was already there, unperturbed by any law enforcement or barriers. I reached the top of the steps. I yell out really loudly, "Hoorah!" It's a Marine Corps thing. And a tall gentleman in brown with a red MAGA hat, now identified as Ray Epps, he bends down and he says, "Semper Fidelis, Devil Dog. We got to hold the crowd back a little bit longer, or they're going to F up the plan." And so from there, a while passed, a little bit of time passed. The police line pulls back, and gentleman that Ray Epps was talking to go directly to this hatch, open it up. I look down at it. It provides interior egress to the inside of the Capitol. They start pulling some things out of it to wave around in front of the cameras. I walk up the steps to the Upper West Terrace to get back to the front of the crowd, like God had put it on my heart to go, and then he put it on my heart to stay at the front. And I'm fully convinced it was to witness some of these things that I've witnessed now. So I get all the way up to the front, and this girl, she latches onto me. And I saying she's pepper sprayed, and, like I think she needs help. So I'll carry her all the way back down to the reflecting pool where the people I had carpooled there with were kind of assembled. And they took her from there, and I went back up to the Upper West Terrace, got back up toward the front of the crowd. I go into the building, and I kind of look. So I'm kind of pushed into the building, really. But I was in that line of people that were right in front of that door. It sort of looked like they were letting people in, kind of pushed in. And then I look around, I try to turn around and back out, but there's a steady flow of people coming in. There was no exiting in that moment. So I turn back around and I look around, and police they're not asking anybody to leave. They're fist bumping people, high-fiving people, conversating with people, giving people thumbs up. That goes on for about 10 minutes, and I turn to walk towards the right down the hallway, and I noticed officers, rather than directing people back towards that door that's just right there that I just came in, they're directing people further into the building, like hand motioning, this way, fist bumping people as they pass. And so that's kind of my account. So after the fact, I'm looking back to the footage to find who this girl was that I helped. I figured that'd be a good character witness, right, to show that I was there to help people. And I do, in fact, find footage of her. She's been identified as Elizabeth of Knoxville, is who she said she was. She's actually Elizabeth Coke from Maryland, and she's got an onion cut in half in a towel, rubbing it against her face. Interviewing with Hunter Walker, the Yahoo News White House correspondent, talking about it's a revolution, we're storming the Capitol. Just
wow.
So I go back and look through all the footage I can find of the Upper West Terrace, trying to find that interaction. And I don't find that interaction, but what I do find is that there's no pepper spray even deployed in that area until after 4:30, closer to 5 p.m., after Donald Trump had asked everyone to leave. So it kind of told me in that moment that her goal was to separate me from that initial breach crowd, that those initial people that went into the building. And I'm still to this day trying to figure out as to why. And I'll say on James Beek's account, right, I've heard the speculation about his case, and I really didn't want to buy into it. So I kept reaching out to James to try to get his transcript of his hearing so I could see what he was talking about in these filings. And sure enough, what he's saying is legitimate. I mean, I have his transcripts right now on a hard drive.
Well, I certainly believe he's legitimate, and James must know, and just those of us that have studied this case have talked to so many of these people, and we're familiar with the track record. And except for you and the other guy that got the judge, who's the only sane judge I've seen, I don't know if he tried any other J6ers, but for him, every judge that saw that video, as far as they'll let it play, if they see the police officers waving you inside, how can they possibly prosecute people for something that the police are telling you to do? So
James is James is definitely not your run-of-the-mill J6 guy. He seems to be very bright. He's not only been able to create the paperwork, but he understood it. And that's an exception. I guarantee you, not many people can do what he's done, but he's a great example that we would love to learn from.
And I want to teach people how to do it. But people have been shied away from me, or people have been. Even Eric told me that people are saying don't followed him or whatever he's saying.
Yeah.
It's the skepticism. Listen, those of us who've been in this for 2.5 years,
Yeah.
I guarantee you, we can show you the knife marks on our back.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I
You know, we're skeptical. When somebody walks free, we go, "Ooh, wow, that was great." Wait a minute. And so don't take it personal. It's just you look at the track record, and that's like stands out like that giant thumb. You know.
I get it. I'm here to tell you that I won on the merits, and I get the skepticism. I understand it, and it was just shocking to me that I thought that, you know, we had once I won, that we would have a win, people would celebrate the win. But I get the skepticism.
Yeah. Well, and that's the situation we're in with so many people. I mean, we're going to talk about Ray Epps with Eric, and when people, and he got 6 months, was 6 months suspended or something like that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So when you see that, but you have somebody like Enrique Tarrio, who's the Hispanic leader of the white supremacist Proud Boys. It's an odd selection to lead your organization if you're a white supremacist, but he wasn't in DC.
Yeah,
and he was 22 years. I mean, how this is.
Well, listen, I got a buddy of mine I interviewed today on Lindell TV. His name is Gilbert Fontecavo, and he's going to get 4 years because he hung out in the hotel room at the end of the day with those guys. That's it.
Oh,
he got knocked into a fence, knocked to the ground, tangled in the fence. He didn't break anything. He didn't hurt anybody. There was no violence. He got the standard 4 plus all the alterations, and he took just like James, he took a stipulated bench trial, which I personally believe is your best chance.
Yeah, probably so.
You cut the jury out. You throw yourself on the mercy of the judge, and you retain your appeal. Brilliant move.
What they had for me was, the only thing that had me recorded is saying on that day was there was a testimony from Tina Myers, who took a picture with me because we were guiding the crowd and watching for Antifa people and stuff. And she said, "What are you here for?" She asked me, "What are you here for?" And the only thing they had me recorded is saying is, "I'm here to protect everyone from violence."
Right. Perfect.
That's the only thing they have me recorded as saying, and that shows intent right there. And the power of intent is a powerful thing. So,
well, you look at Owen Schroyer, who has a name in InfoWars, and he's on tape as telling people, "Don't go in the Capitol. This is a setup." And I don't know how much more exonerating evidence you would need, and yet he still serves 6. I mean, I don't know how you can fight something like that.
Yeah, it's brainwashing. The brainwashing is complete, guys. I mean, people are taking their mainline reality from MSM, and they're not hearing any of this. None of this. That's why we made the book, because we got to get through the wall.
Yeah, it's exactly right. The brainwashing, and they just hate. They're programmed to hate Trump and the Trump supporters and anything right or Republican or whatever so much that they are willing to twist in a knot to get their narrative in their convictions. I watched what's his name, Scott McFarlane, on his X account when he reports a lot about your arrests and stuff like that, and I read their comments, and they're just, "Oh yeah, go get him." I feel so sorry for those people who are just so brainwashed and programmed that they hate their fellow countrymen and women to the point where they want to see the innocent people convicted for nothing. It's a shame.
Well, and you mentioned during the summer of 2020 when you had these mostly peaceful protests that did result in lots of burned buildings, lots of looting and theft, several deaths.
Killed police officers.
34. Yeah, I mean, so and nothing was done basically, and you don't see, and that's why I've tried to tell. I've gotten arguments with these people, and I said, look, I'm a Trump agnostic. I'm part of the smallest minority group in the world. I don't love or hate him. I just, but I said I would feel the same if what was being done to these J6 people, if the BLM activists, Antifa, anybody, take your pick, were held without all due process for 3 years, were given ridiculous sentences like Enrique got, or Joe Biggs, 17 years, just sentences that are longer than many murderers get. I would be just as outraged because I'm a civil libertarian. But the problem is the other side look at you guys and they see you through the lens of Trump, and they hate Trump. They hate him so much that if you had been there for the right reason, if you had been there fighting for, against police racism or something that they agreed with,
George Floyd.
Yeah, George Floyd, exactly, something like that. But so this has become so politicized, and that's why, again, it's amazing that you been able to talk to do any of the people in prison or whatever trust you that haven't had their trials yet, James? Because they really obviously ought to try to have you help them with it.
Well, I reached out to people, and like I said, people have been warned against my approach, and it's a risky approach. I get it. It's a risky. I mean, I took a risk because I watched everybody go down with their bar attorneys, and I think Eric would agree with me. You have a better chance at representing yourself than these do nothing attorneys to that will sit on their hands while you're being railroaded.
Well, if do any of you know Lisa Belanger? She's an attorney that's done tried to do some work with the. I hope she's listening or whatever. But she's suspicious of pretty much all the attorneys.
Yeah,
And she
many
claims
many of them are working with DOJ. They'll just go right along with it. And when you talked about that view that everybody sees these J6ers in this light that's been painted by MSM. We're constantly interviewing for the public. We on J6 Patriot News, Eric's been interviewed out there. In fact, Eric's in book 1. I found his letter in book 1. I wanted to show you that this is the whole purpose of this book, was to identify who these people really are, the humanity of J6ers. I mean, they're your firemen, they're your policemen, they're your EMTs, they're your representatives, for God's sakes. And they're not the insurrectionists, they're not the horrible people. Oh. And I thought that came through good in book 1, but book 2, they're going to teach you how to survive this crap. Because, I mean, Eric and I both agree, you're next. I don't care who you are. If you sit and watch us go much further, you will be next. It's just got to dig through till they get to you.
Well, they're talking, aren't they? I read the other day that they're still targeting thousands of others that weren't in D.C., and they've already set the precedent. If they can get somebody who wasn't in D.C. at all, and he gets the most years of anybody, 22 years. I mean, they can do that to anybody pretty much.
Remember the warning shot that Pete Santelli only reported about the Bundys and spent 280 something days in jail for.
Yeah.
I think that in 2020 Earth, we went into a vortex and went into the upside down.
I agree. Bizarro world. Wasn't it Bizarro world?
Yeah. Changed my mind. And I read 1984 again and watched the movie, and it's whatever, like you said, the MSM and the government says, these sheep, or I don't know, dummies. I don't want to say that, but they just, eat it up. I woke up. I lived in New York City. I was on Broadway, and I lived in New York City during 9/11. And I used to watch CNN and MSNBC. It made me comfortable when they would, say, "Oh, everything's okay. Just go back to sleep." But when they got us into Iraq, and I started asking questions. And like you, I'm more of a centrist minded. I'm not. I think it's dangerous to go too far right, dangerous to go too far left. I'm somewhere in the middle, and it's just about common sense to me, and there's no common sense. And in my view, wherever there's no logic, that's where hell exists.
Well, James, obviously you don't fit the typical profile of a MAGA guy. Yeah. You're not only black, but you're in the entertainment world.
Yeah.
So you must be really Mr. Popularity on Broadway now. I mean, I'm sure you've got tons of friends there. I mean, are there any other Trump supporters on Broadway?
I listened to a lot of conversations about, I had to be I had to be kind of like a spy in the, in that world, and not speak too much. I'm not, look, I look at people's character and not their skin color and their policies. I supported Obama in 2008, but when he signed that TARP bill, I felt like he was just like anybody else. So I didn't support him. That TARP bill that when Bush came out,
right.
Then Senator Obama went and signed that just like everybody else. Like, this guy's just like everybody else, and that was why I ended up supporting him. And then we got him, and then now we know the rest is history. But I want to correct you on something. I don't consider myself as black. I find that very offensive. I don't consider myself as African American. I'm not a descendant of slaves. I'm melanated. man, I'm touched by the sun. I have a little bit more pigment in my
Well,
skin.
people are good. People are going to look at you that way. I mean,
Oh,
that's how they're going to identify you.
I'm just stating where I am. My pronouns are I'm melanated. I am not black. I'm
Good.
offended because black is a color that places me into a political status that's not of my choosing.
Well,
So
at least you have a color. A lot of us are apparently persons of not color. I don't know what
well,
that means. I wish all
is
some color, but I,
is
No
I'm
hair
kind of
either.
offended at that. Yeah.
is white a color? Is Caucasian a color?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just more of a way to divide people. So
It is.
Yeah.
it's wonderful to see.
Vision.
But Eric, I want to definitely talk about Tim's documentary. Eric, tell me how, because Ray Epps is in the news, obviously, and I don't know if you saw, there was a Twitter storm or X storm yesterday, and I was watching online about it, and they had a thing about Ann Coulter, who's kind of been in mothballs for a while, but apparently she's lost her mind because she went out and was getting into a big argument, basically defending Ray Epps, and like they were showing the video because she said he wasn't there. That was the day before, and they had video of him that day saying, "Let's go in the Capitol on January 6th," and she still just refused to believe. So I don't know if you saw that or not, but Ray Epps is certainly has been extremely fortunate in terms of all this. In terms of they didn't want to prosecute him for a long time. He goes to the New York Times, sympathizes with him. He's the victim of conspiracy theory. So how did you come to talk about this lawsuit here?
Okay, so my lawsuit against Ray Epps, it's in the state of Utah. That's where he is supposedly staying now. That's what he told 60 Minutes. And it's also against the prosecutor in his case, Michael Gordon. And it leaves room for defendants, John Doe's yet unknown, and co-conspirators of. So the investigation against Ray Epps was closed by the FBI in July of 2021. They did no extensive search of his social media, his communications, or violate his privacy in the way that they've used FISA warrants to violate all of ours. So I had it set up to serve him a subpoena for this as he entered the courthouse. I got everything arranged to have process servers at every door at the Perryman courthouse done by 6 p.m. the night before. And lo and behold, at 8 p.m., they changed even his sentencing hearing to via Zoom. So he had to already be in D.C., right? His sentencing hearing was the next morning. So I think their further actions only show more complicity, right? More complicity between Ray Epps and the government and how this was all set up. And if nothing else, right, like I've seen everything out there on him, if nothing else this lawsuit accomplishes it, hopefully it'll give us more discovery onto just how involved he was with the government leading up to. Like if you saw the Laura Logan Truth in Media thing about him with Baked Alaska, Tim Giannett sitting there. So it shows Ray Epps following this gentleman around in the November before, taking pictures of him, right? Like staking him out. And then on January 5th, he whispers into the same guy's ear, we're really here to storm the Capitol. And so all that coupled with the fact he admitted to his own nephew in text messages on January 6th.
Yeah.
Approximately 30 minutes after his it's all planned and it involves timing insinuations to me, he texts his nephew saying, well, I was at the very front. I orchestrated it all. So it's his own words that say that he orchestrated it all. And through these actions, he has chilled the First Amendment rights of every right-wing American, of every conservative is now scared to voice their opinion publicly for a redress of grievances. Because of the events of January 6th, they don't want to be involved in a repeat of it and persecuted themselves. January 6th, people that were there, right, don't even want to come out and hand their footage out and show their own, show how peaceful this thing really was. Show the Fed involvement because they know they're just going to be the next targets. So,
but I don't think they can avoid it, Eric. I mean, you and I both know they're not stopping. They grabbed 3 guys here right in my next county and claimed that they had captured them. They were out in the field working, for God's sakes. They weren't running from anybody. They're not going to stop. They have another 1,000 they'd like to sweep up. And as long as this continues, then the fear doesn't help you. The longer you wait, the worse it's going to get. You might as well it's like that pulling that tooth before it becomes an abscess. you've waited a little bit too long. It's time to jerk that tooth. And I don't mean that in violence. I mean, it's time to get involved, whether it's politically or locally, whether it's with this election or whether it's helping the guys from J6. You got to get involved or you will be next.
Do you guys see on the screen there? I have a comment from M. Linda Kula. Apparently there's a Mr. Tanawa Downing. He says he is the answer to freedom from prison because of illegal arrest. And there's an email there. The prisoners are one affidavit away from being free if they just communicate with this man and answer a few questions about the original arrest. I don't know if you guys are interested in that, but
I'll write that down. We're interested.
I wrote the email. I've written the email address down as well. And to piggyback off what Tim was saying there. So I'm pro se, just like James here was, just like a gentleman by the name of William Pope, who does some also great research into this. So through this process of being pro se, I was finally able to get my own paralegal. Now, the courts had to appoint my paralegal and my investigative team for me. They wouldn't allow me to appoint my own. They assigned me standby counsel to hire a paralegal for me. So I go into this paralegal's office, and one of the first things I see is this file. It's called baseball cards. So if you're unfamiliar with the FBI's facial recognition program, it's called baseball. The facial recognition program the FBI uses is called baseball. And it's supposed to be the most comprehensive facial recognition database on the planet. So I look into this baseball card files, and there's more than 3,200 individuals, pictures there, already recognized, already named, already under surveillance by the FBI, with the names of the FBI agents surveilling them, the times of day they're surveilling their homes, all these things right here in this database. And I would say that more detailed information, right, is a bit of a matter of national security. So I can understand some of the classifications, but as to the footage, the minute 13 seconds of footage or 2 minutes of footage is used in a trial, it goes from being highly sensitive, a matter of national security, to being publicly available. So it just goes to show the government only puts these classifications on all this footage to hide the truth.
It just goes to show that this is all a false flag, red herring event, and they're doing everything they can to cover up their actions, and I think they feel like they're going to be in power forever, and hopefully that's not the case.
Well, they should be supremely confident at this point, because as you guys pointed out, the reason why we don't have a real demand for redress of grievances is because look what happened.
Yeah.
When people came there, and the thing about it is that unfortunately you can't count on your fellow citizens, because when you see how much hatred is involved with this Trump Derangement Syndrome, which is a real thing, regardless of what you think of Trump. So they're looking at all these patriots, and people like Ashley Babbitt, who came all the way from California and was killed. And you have somebody like Michael Byrd. I wrote an article on that again, because you're suing Ray Epps, Eric, and Ashley's family is suing Michael Byrd.
There are dozens. There were 40 lawsuits launched on January 8th against people from the MPD, CPD,
great,
Mrs. Pelosi, members of Congress, Mr. McCarthy. That was the cutoff day, because January 6th of the second year fell on a Saturday. You had till the 8th to file. Okay. They just flooded. There are so many civil suits out there now.
Well, what other ones do you know about, Tim? Those are the only two ones I know about.
We are part of that. Me and Eric are part of the one civil suit against the Capitol Police.
Yes.
Right.
And then there's another one.
All the guys who sued Trump and sued J6ers are being sued back by those same J6ers.
God, I certainly wish you luck. But I don't know. James won in a courtroom, so with a judge you didn't think he could win, and so maybe certainly there's because you have to try to do something. And I want to tell the Rockfin chat. I can actually see the Rockfin chat today. So hello, Angus and Rhonda and Chris Graves, and thank you for the tip, Angus. Appreciate that. I just want to let you guys know if you have questions over there.
Don, I didn't get the email from Tanawa. I didn't finish it.
Okay, let me put it back up here. Let me find it. Here it is. Can you read that?
Yeah. Hold on one second.
Okay. So we're at this stage where people are rightfully frightened, but when you can have somebody like Ann Coulter, who's supposed to be on the right, and theoretically you would think she would be outraged by this. I don't know what, she's kind of disappeared for a while.
Got it.
But okay, got it. Okay. But the idea that, somebody can confront her with the video of this guy. I mean, how do you argue with somebody who sees video of a guy saying, let's go in the Capitol, and says, no, he didn't do that. There's no
easy.
argument for that.
No, it really is easy, Don, because the public is seeing this. Like if I gave you a giant jigsaw puzzle, but I only gave you this piece over here and that piece there and this little piece here, and I didn't even tell you how close together those pieces were, you would have the exact view that the public has of January 6th. This new documentary that the president of Gulag just released, David Sumrall from Stop Hate, is called J6, The Real Timeline. And you can find it at open.inc/J6. And it takes all of these different images that you've been from crowdsourcing, from the CCTV footage. And I want to remind everybody, Mr. Sumrall is the only DOJ certified video investigator who's been allowed to see the video, all of it. And so what you will see here is a simultaneous timeline. When Mr. Trump is talking, what is the crowd doing? Where are they at?
Oh, I watched that. I watched that video. So I did, but I didn't know it was the same video. That was really
nice. J6, The Real Timeline, and that is 3 years worth of video investigative work by some amazing patriots, some of whom I'm privileged to know and call friends. It is just like Eric. These are great people, and they're contributing. They're contributing to the memory hole, Don. We're filling it up, brother. We are filling it up.
Well, I'm working on the next volume of this stuff now, and I don't know what I'll call that, but I mean, it includes January 6th and all that. I mean, this is a never-ending story. It's
there you go. You just got your title.
It's very interesting to me. It's very interesting to me that these eternities didn't put these timelines together, because all that stuff, when Trump was still speaking, all these things were happening. And the video from that time, and it's interesting to me how they did not fight for these people, and they are not doing anything for the people. It's just,
the volume is huge, James. I mean, the volume is just overwhelming. So I'm just going to give you think about what just got released, right? Everybody's all crowing about the release. That is 0.002% of that volume. If I sat down in front of this screen and started watching that video, and I watched it for 12 hours a day, for 5 days a week, for 52 weeks a year, I would still have only seen a little over 2,000 hours. And I wouldn't have been able to slow it down and zoom in and look. And so that's why you're just beginning to see this. It's a Hercules work to do it.
Tim, what do you think of because Tucker, shortly before he was fired, and I think it was a real reason he was fired, had some of that footage on, and he certainly shed light on who the shaman really was, what was really going on with the shaman, with the cops, moving around and everything. But because they clearly somebody got to him, because he was supposed to be all week, and he had one great night, and the second week, and then the rest of the week he just he was interviewing the shaman, and that was about it. But there was nothing else. What was he showing? And also, are any of you guys familiar with the work of Gary McBride? Gary McBride is a friend.
Oh,
yeah. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to Gary. He's not getting back to any of us anymore. We've had him on the show early on, and I know he was on Alex Jones right about the same time, and he was supposed to come back the next day and be on all day, and he never showed up, and none of us have heard from him since. So shed some light on him too, as we'd like to know what's going on with him.
Absolutely, M5 Newsgate. Okay, so we got on Tucker. David got on Tucker with the book and pitched the book. 3 days later, Tucker gets kicked off. So I'm not saying it was us, but if you go to Letters from Prison, you can see the book that got Tucker fired.
Mm-hmm.
So, lettersfromprison.us. All right. So the scenario really is all about Gary has been part of this work to produce this video that we've just been talking about, the timeline video. I have a huge respect for Gary, because he has taken the same kind of abuse that J6ers have taken. He's lost his family. He's lost his friends, all the things related to it. Yeah. And he's not a J6er like me. He's not a J6er. He's just a patriot who wants to see right done by these people and is outraged at what's happened in this country. And he sacrificed everything. I truly mean, he's been sleeping in his car sometimes. To get these videos, to produce it. If you haven't found it, go to Rumble, look for M5 Newsgate or Gary McBride or M5 Newsgate.
Well, did he tell you what happened with Alex Jones? Why he didn't come back the next day and hasn't been back since?
I don't know.
Because it was amazing he got on there, because it was great. He was showing a lot of the Ray Epps stuff and a lot of the smoke things that were thrown out there. It was very revealing, and he supposedly had more, just as Tucker supposedly had more things.
He's still been releasing it, Don. It's still been coming out. Again, M5 Newsgate, go to Rumble. There's a ton of videos out there, or go to m5newsgate.com on the web, and you can follow it from there. He's on Twitter. He's an amazing videographer, a very good friend. and has endured a lot to reveal truth.
Well, tell him I said hi, and a lot of us are are wondering what happened to him. Chris Graves and Angry Tiger and these people that were originally because we gave him a platform early on. I'd love to have him back on. We admire his work, but we wondered what happened.
He's just really been heads down. I mean, again, I just described to you what it's like to just see 2,000 hours of video. Yeah. And if you think about the ones that What Parler saw, have you ever seen that cache of data? It's huge. They had to go through all of that individual data. They had to basically put all of this stuff in a chronography so they could tell it in a chronicle, a timeline, where you can truly see this video, that video, this all happening in the same sequence. You're going to need to watch it 3 times. You're going to have to watch it 3 times. It's a fire hose of information, but it finally it puts all those puzzle pieces on the table and slides them together.
Give out the address again where people can watch that.
It's open.ink/J6, or you can go to stophate.com, which is David's website, and find all his documentaries, Bloody Hill, Writing History, and 1,000 Days of Terror, and of course this one now. These guys are really heroes in my book. I call them superheroes without the costumes. They've been threatening to buy costumes.
Well, have any of you guys? Because one of the I think the biggest problem here again, I think people are waking up to the charade that politics is. When this happened, January 6th happened, the Republican Party, Trump is leading the Republican Party supposedly, and he's complaining about a lot of obvious look like irregularities, to put it kindly, in the election, and lots of indications of fraud. So there was justifiable outrage by it, but nobody in the Republican Party, and that's the problem with that. Nobody in the Republican Party is standing up for these prisoners. Why aren't they? If they had a unified, they should be outside that prison every day. And a few of them tried to get in there early on. But have any of you guys gotten any response from some of the Freedom Caucus or anything like that?
I think what's happening, and this is just my opinion, these are all Republicans in name only. These people are not loyal to America. They're loyal to the globalist faction that wants to destroy countries and become a one world conglomerate, whatever that is. And we've been watching this for longer than we. I think whether you like Trump or not, Trump woke up a lot of people, like you mentioned, what's your name, who's supposed to be a Republican or on the right. These people they're actors, and it's controlled opposition. And we are waking up to how many globalists. This is not about right or left or Republican or Democrat. This is about globalists versus nationalists. Yeah. And and good versus evil, So that's what we need to look at, as opposed to how Republican this and Democrat that, and that's how I view it, and that's me coming from a centrist mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. We were at Karen Carpenter over in the Rockfin chat asked a question other people did here. Basically about Trump pardoning the people. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about Trump, but I'm astonished. Like, for instance, Ashley Babbitt's mother is still very supportive of Trump. I think if I was one of the prisoners, I probably wouldn't be, because I don't think he's been as vocal as he could have been. And there's a debate whether he could have pardoned them, but he didn't try. So what are your thoughts there? Because there's no guarantee he would ever be back in office. I know Joe Biggs thinks he'll be pardoned if he gets back in office, but I don't have any confidence that he would do that. What are your guys' thoughts on Trump?
I have thoughts on it. I like President Trump. I'm going to vote for him. I think you should. Think about this. Let's say, theoretically, hypothetically, that he could have pardoned people, many of which had yet to be charged, right?
Right.
Would that not give the government a RICO case, especially had he pardoned someone that was a Fed in the crowd that was antagonizing, causing violence? Would that not have connected Trump to every case of the person that he pardoned when they decided inevitably to come after him as well?
And then wouldn't that give them farther to have proof that was actually a crime? Can they turn Miller versus U.S. says you can't turn an exercise of a right into a crime, and so yeah.
Well, they've done it though, haven't they? Pretty much done it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ford pardoned Nixon before he wasn't charged with any crime, and he pardoned him when he left office again. And the idea was that he could have pardoned them against any future potential prosecutions related to the activities, and that was really bad. And that's why I don't have a lot of confidence that if he got back in office, that he would pardon them, or if, as you guys mentioned, the same argument wouldn't be made that he can't, that it would leave him open because they're prosecuting for everything else. So they would probably prosecuting him for pardon them. I don't know how that would work.
I think there's a couple of ways it could work. He's come right out and said that he would review every case, and you have the possibility whether he's able, if he pardons them, it still doesn't undo the damages that's been done to their lives. Somebody like Eric. I mean, I want to point out, we don't talk about it enough, that the large percentage of these people who were originally swept up, and a good percentage of the ones that are still being held without due process or have received the worst sentences, these are veterans. These are people who took the oath, who put their life on the line in most cases, who served their country honorably. And that scares the hell out of this administration. And that's why they've been picked out. But when it comes down to it, Trump has said over and over again that if you didn't do violence, if you didn't do harm and damage, that you're an innocent victim. And I do believe there'll be either pardons or commutes.
Well, the only thing he's going to be pardoning is people who, everybody else was, fed assets who are causing the violence and provoke the crowd to react.
Well, I think that's why he said on a case-by-case basis. I think that was a wise thing to add to that little bit of a caveat that says not everybody is innocent, and we know that. In the Justis community, we know that. We know that some people acted badly, and they maybe or maybe not were feds. It doesn't matter. We know they acted badly.
Yeah.
And that really has never been our fight. We don't differentiate because it's not about what they did. It's about how they're being treated. It's about the destruction of their constitutional rights and their due process. Because even if they're guilty, they deserve every opportunity to have the same protections as us. And if it's denied to them, it can be denied to you and I. And I think that's the plan.
Yeah, you said something very important. Pardon is one thing, but then how would people get remedy to get their lives back? Even though I was acquitted, I lost everything.
Everything.
I got my car just repossessed and just last month, and I'm in my reputation.
And you've got to be stained with this. I mean, especially in the industry you're in. I mean, have they blacklisted you? Are you going to be in any plays? Or
I'm sure of it. My reputation is absolutely ruined. I'm with this J6 modern day scarlet letter on my chest. Yep. I can't walk into a New York City audition, being in the orbit of January 6th. Because even before that, when I was on tour, that's all that, my cast members and co-workers were talking about. Oh, the January. It was frustrating to knowing that I was there and I may have gotten arrested, right before I got arrested. People were talking about how awful it was. And, they really believe that this was an insurrection.
Yes, they did.
They honestly, truly believe every narrative out there that this is worse than
when and how were you arrested?
Well, like I said earlier, I was in Milwaukee and I was going to have a meeting with my company manager. We were actually going to getting ready to go to sound check for the show that night. It was on a Tuesday, and I was staying in the hotel. And I was going to have a meeting with the company management. And when I walked into the meeting, my company manager walked out and there was the FBI there. And so it entrapped me into a situation with the FBI. My employer were involved in my arrest. Right. And that's why I want to get in touch with this person to want.
Well, it seems very similar to, we've heard so much about family members. I mean, I know in a couple of cases the children of somebody contacted the FBI and said, "Yeah, that's my mom, that's my dad." There, it's unthinkable, but your employer is kind of in the same line.
Yeah, I mean that's grounds for. Because they violated my core private rights, and that's what I want to go after my former employer for that. Because and then they wrote an inflammatory termination letter, an accusatory termination letter based on what they said was the evidence by the DOJ. So they painted me as guilty even before I went to trial. But now that I'm acquitted, looking back on that, I'm an innocent man who was falsely charged. That's right. And now I have a fodder to go after them.
Absolutely. You actually took harm from that, financial and physical. That's slander. That's provable harm. So you have
Yeah.
a case.
Absolutely. Eric, go back and go over again. I don't know if we discussed this or not. The first of all, have you been charged? What is the circumstances of your case? Have you been charged with anything? Did they ever visit your home or anything?
Absolutely. I've been charged with four misdemeanors, two for being on the Capitol grounds and two for being in the building. And I was a single parent. I was a single parent to my kids since they were 9 and 6. And I was a 25-year drug addict. I'm 6 years sober. And throughout all my addiction, every time I was arrested for legitimate crime, my little girl, my daughter, was, "Don't arrest my daddy, don't arrest my daddy," wrote me beautiful letters while I was in jail for periods of time. And lo and behold, she turned me into the FBI.
Oh,
Lo and
God,
behold, she turned me into the FBI.
I didn't know you were one of them. Oh, geez.
And so directly, I'm on vacation for January 6th. I had 3 years sober at the time. I'm working as a CNC machine operator. And before I got home from my vacation, I was notified that I was fired. I had to go back into kitchens to work. And I would work, I spent 25 years during my addiction, mostly in kitchens. They don't drug test. So I go back into the kitchen environment to work, and I 50, 60 hours a week. I'm an exemplary cook. I know what I'm doing. I have great work ethic. And so I go from 50 to 60 hours a week to 5 to 10 hours a week as soon as I have a hearing over January 6th. And the managers find out where I was on one day of the year. And I go through probably 6 different kitchen jobs before finally I'm like, I'm going to dedicate my time to finding every piece of footage I can and just putting it all out there for the public to see. And in that process, I've gathered more than 2,000 hours of footage and become homeless. And a lot of good people have reached out to me and used a lot of the footage that I've gathered, not my footage, body-worn cameras, CCTV, other people's public footage, January 6th persons that were there that aren't defendants, that are scared to release their footage, come to me, "Eric, here's my footage. Please clip this time marker out that's where I show my face. Please clip that time marker out where I'm speaking." And I do. I comply with those requests. They're kind enough to give me their footage, kind enough to acquiesce. And so I'd become homeless. I was sleeping in a church pew where I went to church, and a good veteran, a 20-year Navy veteran here in Pensacola, Florida, invited me to come stay in her home. So I moved from Kentucky to Florida 2 weeks ago. I have pre-trial conference the 19th of this month and trial the 29th. Pro se. And I think I stand a better chance than with a lawyer, though. I think I stand a better chance than with a lawyer.
Well, that's a sad commentary, isn't it? And the lawyers, and also, on the jury system as well, that you may probably stand a better chance for a judge, as bad as they are. But Eric, I mean, I obviously, as a parent, my heart goes out to you. I can't imagine what that's like. So you have 2 children. So are you ostracized from your son as well? Or are you talking to either one of them? Neither of them are supportive?
Well, my son has been extremely supportive. My son has been extremely supportive, right by my side the whole time. He's back in Kentucky. Like, he has a family, his own life goes on. And most of my family, even not like my son is right by my side. He'll go through footage with me when I was still back in Kentucky, do everything he could to help. The rest of my family, they just don't want to talk about it. They want me to forget about it and just not talk about it and move on. And it's difficult to do when it's used against you every time you find a job, right? How do you move on when you can't get back into a field that you love? Like, operating the CNC machines is something I never knew I would have such a passion before. But so I'm very mathematically inclined, and I loved it.
Well, again, my heart goes out to you for what you've gone through. But did you? Again, I apologize for missing this. But so have you gone to trial? Were you convicted of anything, or are you still?
January 29th of this month, I go to trial.
Okay, all right. And what do you know? What is your possible sentence?
So the 2 of the misdemeanors each carry a year, and the other 2 each carry 6 months. And the judge informed me when I went pro se at my what's called a Beretta hearing, where you have to prove your competency to stand trial as a pro se defendant, as a pro se litigant. And the judge informed me in that hearing, well, Mr. Clark, if you're convicted of all 4 of these crimes, I can run your time consecutively. I can give you a year, 6 months, and make you serve 3 years. So nice. I took it as a threat. And I'll be happy to do 3 years for my nation.
You know, I've seen all the video work you're doing, Eric, and buddy, we're all watching it. You're doing great. Follow Eric on Twitter, folks. Follow Eric Clark on Twitter. This is some really amazing, and this is how it's going to happen. This is why we can make the videos. This is why we can make the documentaries, because people like Eric have just had enough, and they're getting out there and doing it themselves, and they're contributing to this big puzzle. And the puzzle is coming together, Don. It's coming together fast. You'll have a whole book on this one, my friend.
Well, it's, to try to keep up with it is amazing, but just the people I've talked to, I had a young lady on the show a while back, and she, I don't even know her name, her real name. I mean, she remained anonymous, but she sent me video footage and pictures. So I know she was there, but she's terrified of being prosecuted. But what, in your case, Eric, the treatment is so unequal all across. I mean, it's outrageous that anybody's being charged with anything. But you have Enrico Terrio getting the Hispanic white supremacist getting 22 years more than anybody. So, if there was a Hispanics rights group out there, they should claim discrimination on that. How come the Hispanic guy got longer than anybody? But apparently it doesn't work for that. But and you have other people.
The Proud Boys is a boogeyman. The Oath Keepers are boogeyman. So they create these. They have to have a boogeyman so that their followers and their sheep can have something to latch on to. And they had to get those convictions. I mean, they had to.
Well, yeah, they're very because they demonize these people right away. They call them insurrectionists. Although it's curious that not a single insurrectionist is being charged with insurrection. That's it's almost as strange as having a Hispanic lead a white supremacist group. So a lot of strange things going on there. But then you have all these people that are in prison. Now, Eric, you've gone through like so many people. You made the ultimate sacrifice. You lost your family. I think Gary McBride, I think he's lost two of his three sons, I think, are not talking to him anymore or whatever. So his wife left him. So that's what happens. Invariably, the whistleblowers, or in this case, you're essentially a whistleblower because you're standing out there. You're saying this isn't right. What's happening to you? But how does it differ with you? And I'm not saying you caught a break or anything, but why were some people put in prison right away, put in solitary confinement, beaten allegedly, all the stuff that we've heard, and been kept there, again, denied all due process without a single civil libertarian, the ACLU, anybody complaining, not a peep out of them for 3 years now. And then there are people like you who you're going to go to trial this month, but you didn't serve any time in prison, correct?
Correct. Not yet.
Yeah, I certainly hope you don't. But I mean, why do you think some were treated that way and some weren't? I just wondering.
I think James touched on it well. I think it's a lot. Oftentimes, if you look at their affiliations, either they're a Proud Boy or they're an Oath Keeper, or like me, I'm a veteran. But not only are they veterans, but a lot of them in there that don't have affiliation with, say, Proud Boys or Oath Keepers, were some form of special forces. They were the most elite in our military. Green Berets like Jeremy Brown.
Jeffries.
There's a lot of that. If you look into it, a lot of the those that are incarcerated pre-trial that aren't Oath Keepers or Proud Boys are special forces.
Mm-hmm.
Decorated.
And a lot of those people were I witnessed the Roseanne Boylan situation in the tunnel.
Yes, yeah.
Who I witnessed all that stuff that was going on. There was a lot of confusion around that whole thing, and I noticed that a lot of those people were there without, or in jail and gulag without any due process.
If any of you have contact info for Roseanne's family, I know her sister, I think, was doing that, but I haven't been able to get in touch with that. I'd love to, because really, I've had Ashley Babbitt's mom on a couple of times, and people know about her. But Gary McBride is the one who really, I learned about Roseanne Boylan through her. He made a big deal about it and said, hey, there was another woman that was murdered by the police, beaten to death, and but nobody knows her name. Do you know if her family is anybody doing interviews or talking about that?
I bet you Tommy Tatum knows. That's a name we haven't mentioned yet. Another videographer who's been going full blast. He was there trying to help Roseanne. Jake Lang basically helped him get off a stairwell where he was being crushed and his leg broken. And he was in proximity. He saw the whole thing. And I know he's been in contact with Roseanne's family in the past. But these are all people that are doing exactly what Eric's doing. They said enough. They're putting their brains and their time and their energy into finding things out and telling everybody who will listen. The same thing in these books. Again, I keep coming back to the books because they're first-person testimonies. Eric's testimony is in there. Why he went that day, why he felt God called him to do what he did. You can't get any closer than first person testimony, folks. And again, all of these people need help. Eric is listen to his story. I mean, this is his work has made him homeless. His persecution has made him a pariah. These people deserve our support. They really do. And the money from these books goes to support them.
Well,
Patriot Mail Project. I've received a lot of letters. I got some cards, Christmas cards and stuff. Even now that I've been acquitted, and it's just really nice to know that people care, that people are out there. It put a smile on my face. That there's people out there that really support you, and I'm sure I'm one of the lucky ones, and I wasn't thrown into the gulag, but my heart goes out to them, and what you're doing is really important work. I do have to go in a few. I just want to say that I have a book myself that I'm wanting to
please promote it. Yeah.
Finish, and I'm hoping to get it done this year. If you would like to donate to it, it's givesendgo.com/hisstory with 2 S's, HISSTORY. So I would love to get that finished and tell my story. I've been meaning to write that or publish it before January 6th, but I have a few more chapters to write.
Well, it's kind of an ongoing story. I mean, we don't really know. But I certainly hope we'll be interested to see what happens with these lawsuits that are starting now. Because if you can win any of them, that would be a huge victory. But I mean, how confident are we about that? Because the courts are so corrupt.
It's nice to see. I mean, I was wondering this whole time to see everybody being victims and being, the right being just really pummeled by, the power structure. And but now it's nice to see some fighting back, and I fought like nobody else fought in this whole case. And I won, and I've proven that there is hope out there. And I'm just hoping my precedent will people will pay attention to it.
Well, there's a question up there from Twisted Pistol, and again, it's about Trump. And I don't know if exactly said that.
I'll answer it.
Yeah, answer it because you also heard that, didn't he say? I read somewhere that on Truth Social that he said he was going to send 10,000 troops or something like that to go after the. I mean, I don't explain that to us.
So I can't really explain necessarily Trump's words, right? But what I can say is there's one defendant by the name of Landon Copeland. Landon Copeland has, since he's been in the gulag, he's came out and made a confession that he was in fact a member of Antifa, that he started an Antifa chapter in 2009, that he came to the Capitol with 250 members of Antifa, and that 100 of the persons currently named as defendants are in fact members of Antifa that were working as confidential human sources for government agencies. Now, maybe Donald Trump was talking about those 250 individuals. Maybe there were some people there, and even some among the arrested, that were working in behalf of the federal government to perpetrate this false flag event that in fact deserves some time in prison, right? Yep. If you participated with the government to entrap me and my fellow Americans and to chill our First Amendment rights, you deserve that time in prison, and you deserve to be named in some of these civil suits as well.
Amen. Amen.
Absolutely. James, if you need to go, James, go ahead and give out any links or whatever that you need to before you. I want to make sure you get to.
Man, if I just want to give it up for Eric. I mean, I'm following what he's doing, and I'm just wishing the best, man. If you speak so passionately like you do on trial, man, just tell your story, and hopefully you get out of here, get out of this whole situation with the same outcome that I have. So I'm praying for that and hoping for that. Again, my book is GiveSendGo, www.givesendgo/his story. And I also have a legal fund because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going after my former employers, and it's givesendgo.com/James if you want to help me out with funding that. I'm just struggling right now to rebuild my life, even though, like I said, I've been acquitted. It's life is not beautiful.
Well, he said even for somebody that's one of the rare victories in this case, where you somehow beat this system, and man, anybody that beats this system, man, my hat is off to you, because the system is so bad, it is so corrupt, and for you to go in there and be able to represent yourself and get acquitted by that judge in particular. That's amazing. So congratulations are in order, but you still have to face earning a livelihood now, because you're probably still going to have that stigma
Yeah.
for the rest of your life. Oh, he was January 6th guy, and he got off. So
Well,
people.
Well, I was going to say, my very first memories are being in the foster care system, abused and abandoned in the foster care system. And I was in prison for the first 5 years of my life. And I said to myself, I'm not going back to that. I overcame and became a 5-time Broadway star. I overcame and got out of poverty. I used my voice and to not be a statistic as a melanated man in America, and throughout the whole January 6th nightmare, I said to myself, if I can get through what I got through as an infant child, through that horrible foster care system, I can get through this. And God has been with me. He's been in me and shown through me. And I'm hoping, to inspire others through my story. That's why I think my book is so important for get finished and help. So with that, thank you so much for your time, Eric. I wish you the best. If you need any things, give me a call, and we're right. We can love to help you out with that.
Thank you, James Meeks. Appreciate you being here. Wish you all the best of luck and with your book. And so again, go support him at Give, Send, Go. And we'll talk to you soon, James. Good luck to you. Look for you on Broadway. Okay. Bring MAGA to Broadway.
We'll see.
Okay. All right, buddy. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being with us. Okay. So Tim, again, how did you weren't there on January 6th?
Nope.
So how did you become involved? Did you just know people that were there, or you were just an outraged citizen like a lot of us are?
A single letter changed my life. Eric's heard the story. I wrote a January 6th. I just picked one out of the hat. Had no idea who I was writing to, who they were, what they did, anything. Just my wife and I wrote him a letter of support, and he sent me a 4-page letter back that destroyed my heart. And I tell everybody it just set something on fire, which turned me from mild-mannered retired executive to furious Tim. These people need a voice, and they're being silenced. I can't think of anything better to do with the rest of my life than to be their voice, to make sure their messages get out there, to make sure Eric's message gets out there, to make sure Mr. Copeland's message gets out there, to make sure that Jeff McKellop, the gentleman I wrote to, who is sitting in a Dallas-Fort Worth mental prison and has not seen trial since March of 2021 when he was arrested. That's why I'm furious, Tim.
Well, that's a bit different. So they just basically said he was nuts because he was there. Why is he in a mental institution?
Because that's how they silence you. It's a Stalinist method. Go back and read Solzhenitsyn again.
Sure.
This is how you make sure people's testimonies can't be credited. You basically slander them and then do everything you can to discredit. And by the way, this guy is a 22-year Special Forces veteran, a Ranger, did his time, went out, 9/11 happened, went back in, qualified for Green Beret, and then served for 22 years. And the last 10 years has been doing protective services for the State Department. Never been arrested, father of 2 beautiful children, Paige and Davis. And he was arrested in the type of brutality that we've talked about here on this show, and that you can listen to his testimony at our website at j6patriotnews.com. Eric's out there too. Go to the interview section, listen to our interviews, read the letters, educate yourself, quit listening to the narrative, and then don't do nothing.
Absolutely. Well, what's your impression of it? You mentioned he had 2 beautiful children. I think Joe Biggs had a family. I don't know, but how have the families, and Eric, we saw unfortunately what happened to Eric, and Gary McBride, who wasn't even there again, but just getting involved in this. How do you think most of the people in prison, do you get the notion that the families are abandoning them, or are they allowed to visit them even? How does that work?
Well, I just want to say something right away. A lot of people have said, well, look how many guilty pleas they got. What they got was plea deals. And they
Right.
got those because these people could not watch their families be destroyed, their children given PTSD, sent into penury, lose their homes, lose their houses. And many people have succumbed to that they are willing to take the guilty, even though they're not guilty, because they want to spare their families that pain. But for those who have not been given that opportunity, who refuse to bend the knee, the penalty for their families has been great. And it's one of the things that we do at American Gulag Chronicles is some of this money that comes from these books. We try and keep these families in their homes. We try and keep them together, make their car payments, sometimes insurance payments, sometimes medical, whatever it takes to keep them alive. And let me tell you, that makes a big difference to the people who are in these prisons, because they know that somebody is looking out for them and for their families. And that's a patriot thing to do. That's a duty. And if you're listening to this and you're not involved, go to patriotmailproject.com, pick out a prisoner from your state, write them, and let's see if we can set you on fire.
Yeah.
Amen, Tim. Amen.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And people, however we can support them, and that you bring up a good point, because not only are a lot of these people unfortunately lose their families or get ostracized by their families, but even if their families support them, they're going to be tarred with the same brush. Oh, your dad's an insurrectionist. Your husband's an insurrectionist. Whatever. That must be a terrible price that people don't realize when people are touched by it. I write about a lot of this stuff. I've written a lot about Lee Harvey Oswald's mother, who was in reality a really great woman. I had a guy on the show, became her best friend in her later years. But imagine what her life was like. She was fired instantly from her job after the assassination. She was already elderly. She couldn't work. Nobody would hire her the rest of her life. And she was tarred by the media as, trying to hawk photos and charge for interviews. She had no other means of income. What was she supposed to do? And I think that's the unfortunate part. And I hope that doesn't happen to people associated with January 6th, but people are, you mentioned seeing all the people, the comments and everything. And I know there are millions of people out there. Whenever I talk about this here, they think everybody that was in Washington, D.C. should be hanged.
Yep.
They really do.
That's hate. That's so hard. That's so hard to understand.
Yes.
And I think that's the divisiveness that this narrative is constantly pushing, that blacks hate whites and whites hate black and racists are these guys. You know what we're doing, dude? We're erasing. You're trying to bring stuff out of the memory hole. These guys are trying to erase memory. Yeah. We are our memories. Everything about us, not just the individual, but our country, is about the memories, the hard-won experiences, the blood and the sweat and the death that makes us who we are, that gives us the quality of life, that gives us the patria of America. And it's getting lost because they want to erase it. It's the one thing that Americans have is our heritage, and they want to erase it. And people who stand up for it, like Eric and everybody who went that day, and all the folks who have tried to do good since then, gosh, I have met the most amazing people, Don. Yeah. I can't believe that I'm 68 and I'm meeting heroes every day, people like Eric, but even greater people who weren't there that day, who are sacrificing everything for this, because it's a fight for the Republic. It really is. It's not just about J6. I interviewed Zach Rail, the Proud Boy. He got 17 years. 3 days after his sentence, you can listen to his interview. You know who he was meeting in that waiting cell? People who had been protesting outside an abortion clinic, a couple of parents who'd been in the school board meeting, and a doctor who was being sued for not working with the vaccines. That's who he met in this prison. It's not just J6ers anymore. And people like you and I and Eric who will speak out, certainly we're on that baseball card list. Guaranteed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it terrifies again the prospect, because if I have an alibi that day. I was in a dentist chair, so they but it doesn't seem to matter.
It won't matter. It won't matter because it's about the narrative and control.
Yeah, and if you're expressing support, it's not necessarily that I'm even supporting him. And I think again, I probably would. They probably would agree with what I say a lot of the time. Most of the people I think that are in prison, but that's irrelevant to me. Because you either have a legal system or you don't. You either have the rule of law or you don't. And they've been denied all due process. You can't lock people up for 3 years and especially if they were thrown in. There's nobody there. What was the worst crime? breaking a window, fighting back against a cop. They're thrown in solitary confinement, beaten.
No, the worst crime was murder. The worst crime that
Well,
day was murder.
Well, yeah,
that
I'm
was
talking
the worst
yeah.
crime.
Well, I'm talking about on the part of the protesters. They didn't murder
Yeah.
anybody, although they still continue to lie and say they did.
I will tell you that
Yeah.
that until Americans will put aside their fear and understand their duty, I always tell people in these, when I get a chance to speak like this, I want you to find a picture of your children or your grandchildren. I want you to sit there and think about all the good times that you've had as a child and look at their pictures and try and imagine what you're going to say to them, why you allowed that beautiful thing that you had as a child to be taken from them and fitted them for shackles. How will you explain that to you? If you cannot find your courage while doing that, then you're beyond hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's have you either one of you guys, Eric, have you reached out to anybody that's in prison? Are you communicating with anybody there? Can they communicate regularly with people?
We talk to them all the time. I had 3 prison calls today. I talked to them on Corelink, Securus, GTL, Getting Out. We stay in contact. Otherwise, how could we tell you these things?
Yeah.
How could we relate? How could we write these letters? How could we put all this together for you if we did not stay connected? And you can do the same. You can go to patriotmailproject.com, pick a prisoner, start writing, get a relationship, support them, and you can talk to them too. It's very simple. They'd like to make you think it's difficult. I can't visit anymore. They blocked me from all my BOP visitation requests, but I can still talk to them. I can still write them. I can still communicate. And I think everybody else should too, because that's what sustains them. If Eric gets sent to prison, trust me, I'll be writing to Eric. I will be talking to Eric. I will be staying in contact with Eric, because that's what we're supposed to do. Who remembers Matthew 25, 35 through 40? The least of the things you do, the least of these,
Yes.
my brothers and sisters, you do for me. That's the credo that Americans should adopt right now, because this is a time, just like the revolution, this is a time when we need the American courage.
Absolutely.
Tim. And yeah, I could say the same. I spoke with Jake Lang today by phone. You know, he gets 15 minutes on the phone, but it's an inspirational 15 minutes when you get to talk to one of those guys in the gulag every time. They're not downhearted like you would expect. They're not beaten and broken. Their spirits are actually way higher than some of us that aren't incarcerated, right? So it's been a roller coaster for me, but these guys, they sit in there, they work out, they read the word, they grow spiritually and physically every day, and it's a beautiful thing to see. But you know they should be free, right? You know they should be free.
Oh, and the fact that I talk about being a civil libertarian all the time, because that's when I got into politics. I was on the left. I was a card carrying member of the ACLU when I was a teenager, and they were a completely different organization then. And we don't have any civil libertarians today at all. This is what is happening is an outrage, and they should. I mean, first of all, just for the people that are in prison have been not on process, but then the ridiculous, outrageous sentences that some of these people are getting as well. But I don't see anybody on the left speaking out at this. No civil libertarian except me, to my limited platform. There's no other civil libertarian I see that just is concerned about the bastardization of the rule of law here. They've twisted it, and it's being so unfairly and unevenly applied, especially when you juxtapose it against what happened in 2020, where you had way more protests.
Yep.
Same kind with political protests. They were just protesting something else. But you either have a right to protest or you don't. You can't have a right to protest some things, but not other things. And they politicized this and made this into an insurrection. When you had some of those groups took over state capitol. At least one, I think, was the state capitol was taken over. Nothing happened. Was that an insurrection?
They drove Donald Trump into the bunker, for God's sakes. They tried to set St. John's Church on fire and burn it down. Excuse me.
And when they started,
Eric, you walked around on the grass, bad boy. We're sending you to prison for this.
Yeah,
come on.
The church thing is a perfect example how they twisted that, where Trump, in his awkward way, was going and he wasn't the bad guy there, but they criticized him for holding up a Bible or something, and they had just set fire to a church, and they just completely, that was lost in the shuffle. What they did, I mean. The narrative is twisted and spun so dishonestly, and I can't believe there's no, and I believe me, I've talked to a lot of people that agree with me on the JFK assassinations and other things. I can't get through to them. Eric, they hate all you guys. I mean, they think that they really think you're insurrectionists. They think that what you were doing that day was, attempting to circumvent a free and fair election and all that stuff. And it's just, I don't know how you argue with people like that, because they're beyond hope, and there are millions of them.
You make them read this damn book. I'm telling you, man. Lock them in a room and they can't come out till they finish it.
Where can we get the book?
Lettersfromprison.us. It's very simple. Lettersfromprison.us. You're gonna read some incredible testimonies in the first person, and you're gonna, along the way, you're gonna do what we've been doing here with Eric. You're gonna find out what incredible people they are. Normal, everyday people, veterans, cops. I could go on, and they're being treated unfairly in America because they want the people to watch it and be afraid. And that's the exact opposite of what you do. Go back to I love that movie, V for Victory. It's time. It really is time to stand up as a country, to stand up as a united we the people, and demand something from our congressmen and senators. So some accountability. If you have a pencil and paper, 202-224-3121. I'll give it again, 202-224-3121. That is your congressional switchboard. That's the switchboard for the people's house.
Do it again. I'm putting it in the chat room. 202-234.
No, 202-224-3121.
224-2131. Okay.
No,
I'll just post it in there.
202-224-3121. 3121.
Okay.
And just give them your zip code and tell them you want to speak to your representative or you want to speak to your senator, and they'll get you there. And even if you get the recording, leave the message. Release the hostages, release the video, give us some justice in America, or find another job.
Absolutely. Well, it's just, so we talked about, we've had a few members of the Freedom Caucus, a few Republicans that tried to visit the prisoners. It's probably been a couple of years ago now, and they didn't get they tried again. So has anybody seen the prisoners? Has any congressional representative been able to see them?
Gohmert, Troy. I don't think Higgins has been in there. Certainly MTG's been there a number of times. There's been a number of people who have gone in and visited them.
Okay, so they did. Okay.
Yeah, and I spoke to MTG at Mar-a-Lago back in September about this. I kind of cornered her, and she has a copy of the book. I made sure she admitted that she had read it. And then I asked her, why are you not, I hear you screaming about a lot of things, but can you explain to me why you're not screaming on the top of your lungs about January 6th prisoners? And she said, because nobody will listen to me. Nobody in Congress will listen to me. And I believe her. I believe that the caucus has an intent to do it, but they simply cannot get the uniparty to come to heel. And so maybe we got to get rid of them. Do it the right way. Vote them out.
What do you guys think of Ramaswamy? I like everything this guy says. What do you think of him?
I like everything he says, but it seems like he's plagiarizing Obama, and I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I kind of feel like he is a consummate politician.
Yeah.
What would you like to hear? I got one of those right here.
Yeah, well, he's as smooth. He's sharp as a tack, and he's and I got to say, people think I'm just saying that the reason, because people tell me all the time he's disinfo. I've heard the Obama thing and all that, but I watched him interview Alex Jones on TV, and he had there was a copy of one of my books, Hidden History, on the bookshelf behind him.
Boom.
And I didn't send it to him. So I'm saying, how can I not like that guy? Somehow
you gotta like him.
So
maybe he'd make a great vice president. I think that's what they're all primarying for now. Why Donald Trump kind of stays out of the debates is because he's looking at it like, who's going to be my VP pick?
Well, Trump could go a long way to making people who are uneasy about him feel better by picking somebody like him, or even Rand Paul or somebody like that people trusted as being different. And but if he does something, and I just, again, his track record is if he goes to Nikki Haley, he has no chance, because there are going to be millions of people that won't vote for him just because of that.
I heard Ben Carson being bantered around the other day, Sleepy Ben, So
that's again, I just wouldn't be my first pick. I just think Ramaswamy is, because he's the one that's carrying the rhetoric in these debates. He's the only one that's talking about it, because Trump isn't there. And logically, that's who we should pick. But I don't know. I don't see that
Well,
happening.
I
But,
will tell you, we offered a briefing, but we've never heard back. So yeah.
oh, you offered to brief Vivek? Okay,
Yeah, we offered to take our whole video crew and give them the same kind of briefing we gave Senator Massey. I mean, Representative Massey, but we haven't heard back from him.
So did Massey? You were able to brief him?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He's the best guy in Congress, I think.
Tommy Tatum did that. And just recently Gary McBride too. We paid for them to fly up there and meet with these guys because obviously they're living hand to foot. I mean, hand to mouth. So that's another thing we try and enable people like Eric and Tommy and I mean these are the fighters. Somebody's got to be on the back. You can be the front line, but somebody's got to supply you and keep you fighting, and that's kind of what we do.
Absolutely, and that you guys are doing great work, and that it's especially the people that are in prison. That must give you strength, though. If these guys that are being treated the way they're treated and they're denied all due process for 3 years, if they have a good attitude, man, that's gotta. Especially when they're saying they must. Have they mentioned anything to you when they see a Joe Biggs get 17 years, when they see Enrico Tarrio get 22 years, or when they see even when they see Owen Schroyer, who was never in the building and was telling people not to go in the building, when they see him get 60 days, he shouldn't have got 60 seconds. Does that, are they more fearful that they know they're going to get an outrageous sentence probably when they finally go to trial?
I can't speak for Eric because he's been waiting an awful long time for justice. I can tell you that in this second book, they have developed a philosophy of survival. They've been in the gulags. They've been moved around. Some of them been diesel therapied for 9 or 10 different prisons, moved around constantly so their loved ones and people can't track them and help them. They have developed a method of perseverance, a method of faith. I mean, the faith is just what's really surprising, to tell you the truth. I'm not sure mine is that strong, but these gentlemen have some incredible faith. And I think that's what uplifts them. And the fact that they know that people are out here supporting them still, believing in them, not forgetting who they are and where they are, gives them a stamina that is superhuman, really superhuman. And it comes through in their letters. I'm just telling you, because almost every one of these letters, there's one central theme. Thank you so much for writing to me and not forgetting that I was here.
Well, and I think it's that patriotism they have, probably, that they still somehow, against all reason, really trust this system. And I'm met with skepticism from my audience whenever I even talk. For a long time, I've thought there was massive electoral fraud. I wrote about it in my book, Hidden History. It goes back to vote scam and the Collier brothers. 2020 was the first example, but it's the most outrageous. So yeah, people are saying, why are you talking about voting? And Martin Thorne says, Rand Paul, I don't think so. The guy was, and I know his wife, but he's Ron Paul's son. And Ron Paul is one of my heroes. Ron Paul is one of the greatest politicians. He wrote a foreword to one of my books, Crimes and Cover-Ups. So how can I not love Ron Paul? Absolutely. And his son has not been as good as him, but I still think, considering the other choices, that it would please a lot of people if he picked Ron Paul's son. And again, he said, people are saying, how can you, Geesebuster said, how can you just talk about voting? And I guess that's the point. How could you guys, because I'm skeptical about it, because we know the reason they're in prison is because they complained about the last election, and Donald Trump is being prosecuted currently for complaining about the election.
I'm just going to put it to you, Don. What do you think is going to happen on election day, on the day after election? If Donald Trump wins, what do you think the left will do? And if Donald Trump is cheated, what do you think the right will do?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. At this point, I mean, I don't see how any of us could trust that the votes are going to be honestly counted. I mean, especially because nothing after 2020, all these people in prison, people like Eric still face the prospect of that. And they're supposedly looking for 1,000 others or something. They want to find even more people that weren't there. So, and that was from the last time. No reforms were made because no acknowledgement that fraud took place. And they want to prosecute you for saying that it did. So in 2022, we saw the results of that. It certainly looked the same kind of thing. And a lot of their people like Kerry Lake, especially, and Blake Masters in Arizona. And Kerry Lake apparently is maybe going to be prosecuted for complaining about the election out there. So you're right. after this election, because so many people are thinking that Trump could win, he's ahead in the polls. But if he does win, the other side, I think you're going to see protests that aren't mostly peaceful. Let's put it that way, because they're certainly not going to accept that. Nope. But on the other hand, the other side, at this point, that's probably going to be Trump's last chance to run.
Don, if I just don't want to say it this way, because I don't want everybody, if Trump doesn't win, I don't want everybody to give up. But I think he's our last great hope for the republic. I really do.
Yes.
And I think that if he loses, that we are in for the biggest crap storm you have ever seen, and you better have your go bag ready.
Right,
I'm already having troubles here in my county with migrants, illegal immigrants trying to get licenses. They're working in jobs that other Americans could have. They've attacked people in our neighborhoods and out. I mean, it's already started, my friend. When the $5,000 runs out, what will they do?
Absolutely. I just want to address Martin Thorne. I'm glad to see you here. It's not my standard that somebody likes my book, but obviously, if a politician has one of my books, that's going to prejudice me in favor of him. I mean, how could that not affect me? I mean, that's ridiculous.
He's either your biggest fan or your biggest detractor. One of the two. He's got a copy, right?
Exactly. So I mean, Ron Paul, my son did voluntary work for him. We went to his rallies. He was robbed completely. Again, massive vote fraud going back to 2012. I mean, Ron Paul probably won every primary that year, and they didn't let him win one. He would win the internet primaries they had vote online. He'd win 80% of the votes, whatever. I saw how crowded it is. The crowd was wrapped 3 times around the building, and people were carrying signs saying, honk if you love Ron Paul, and all the cars were honking. And so he had tremendous support. So yes, Rand is not as good as him, but he's still better than most of the others out there. And of all the choices Trump could make, he certainly beats any of the others. I think people would feel better about it because he is a Paul. So
you could do worse. You could certainly do worse.
yeah, exactly. And so but I think, what we need to look beyond this, because again, more and more people, and I think, all the people that voted for Trump have come to the realization, obviously, that the vote, that they're not counting the votes honestly because of the last election, but they're still hopeful that they will this time. And I think that's where they get, because if the same thing happens and, whoever the Democrats, I don't know if it's going to be Biden or whoever, if they win, what do you think because at this point, you can't have another January 6th. At that point, do you have people talking secession? And that's probably the best choice, but we saw what happened in 1860 with that. So it's not a great track record of that. So what do you think would happen if Trump doesn't get elected?
I'm going to decline that one.
Here's what I say. I say, so since 2020, I've made it a point to be a poll worker, to show up to precinct committee member meetings, to get involved at a local level. I don't trust the elections, but they're not going to change if we don't get involved. Like my parents are big conservatives, and they were huge Ron Paul fans. Mm-hmm. I have to say that if people didn't see it then, but they see it now, get involved at a local level. I don't want to think about what January 6th, 2025 could be. I want to think about what we can do now between now and November to make sure things go right.
Amen. And we all pray for that, and I'm afraid I'm coming up on a hard stop, but it's been an honor to be on with Eric, somebody I really think of as a friend, even though we probably have never met in person. We're only a couple of 100 miles away from each other, but I've met so many people like Eric that they're just sterling human beings who really believed in their country, and they should not be persecuted for this. And we'll do everything in our power as long as we breathe to make sure they get freedom. And I'm very honored. I'm looking forward to your book, Don. I want to see the next down the memory hole.
Okay, well, it's basically a continuation. I had Hidden History, which is my bestseller still. There was a basically JFK assassination up to the Obama years when it was published, and then I had Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776, 1963. That's the one Ron Paul wrote the forward to, and that's basically from the American Revolution up to the JFK assassination. And this one is kind of a combination of both. We'll have a lot more on JFK Jr., Oklahoma City, but we'll go back to Lincoln and FDR and all this to show you that these things have always existed. And we didn't get where we are today by accident.
No.
The reason we're in this situation today is because of all this stuff that happened in the past. And unfortunately, too many Americans let it happen. And
it takes hard sacrifice. It takes sacrifice. It takes willingness, and it takes courage. And aren't those the values that we say as an American? Home of the brave, land of the free.
Yeah, we think so.
Yeah, we can't be land of the free if we aren't the home of the brave.
Well, we're still talking about democracy, and they're basically saying people like Eric threaten democracy, and that's it's ridiculous. The people that question the vote in a democracy, supposedly, and we're really a constitutional republic, but let's say we're not either one, really. We're not functioning as either one of them. But a democracy is supposed to be your most precious right, is the right to vote. So if there are questions about it, and millions of people have questions about it, basically everyone that voted for Trump, I would say almost all of them, thought something was wrong. So that's the problem. They opened up a can of worms here, because that's 70, 80 million people that voted for Trump, regardless of what you think of Trump. They're not in my world. They're not all the way down the rabbit hole, but they've seen enough to know how corrupt everything is. And they understand the system isn't working. The system's rigged, as Trump used to say. And he's exactly right. So having seen that, they're going to, at some point, they're going to say, well, we have to turn away, because if we can't vote ourselves out of this, and they won't let us secede. What are we going to do? We can't, because most of us, I think, I'm sure you guys would probably agree, is that we'd be just fine being, in a separate area somewhere.
I'm looking for a spot in the woods.
Yeah. Without having to worry about Karens and everybody coming around, and trying to demand you do this. We'd be fine with that. But the problem is,
that'd be the end of the republic. Yeah. That'd be the end of the republic, end of our civilization here in America. And I think that they'd be happy to see that. They'd be happy to see the chaos that they could then rule over. But I'm very privileged to have spoken with you guys tonight.
Well, you got to go ahead and say, so Tim, thanks for Tim Rivers, and give all your links again, promote what you need to promote.
Absolutely. Come to our website. Stay informed. Eric's stuff is out there. We keep track of all of this. J6patriotnews.com, letter J, number 6, patriotnews.com. Find the book at lettersfromprison.us. Get you a copy, folks. These are either going to be one of the most prized books that you pass down to your kids about what's happened during this period, or they're going to be the most banned books in America. Either way, you're going to want a copy. Lettersfromprison.us. And Eric, my heart's with you, buddy. I got my fingers crossed for your trial, and I know what's coming up for you, and we're praying for you.
Thank you, Tim Rivers. Watch his film, read his book. Thanks so much for being on the show, Tim.
Thank God. Don't do nothing, America.
Okay. Take care. Thank you. So, Eric, so you're saying, so how are you? You have your son still supporting you. You said your family kind of is. Have you? Obviously, you can't just go out and get a job anywhere. You said you had to kind of go back into the kitchen. So does this follow you everywhere when you find, like, do people know who you are when you apply somewhere? Is the baggage there with you? They know that you're a J6er?
In Louisville, Kentucky, it generally was, because my face was all over local news channels for quite a while after the arrest. A lot of allegations were made against me as in white supremacist, insurrectionist, domestic terrorist, none of which are true, right? I mean, I raised my kids in the West End of Louisville. They're both in interracial marriages. All my grandchildren are interracial, little grandbabies. They all love me to death. And even when places where it's not, with a hearing every 2 months for the past 3 years, you have to take time off work for these things. It comes up. It's found out. With you posting, with me posting all the footage I can find all over social media, it spreads around. Like I said, right now that's no longer a concern of my employment. This veteran I'm staying with, she had a shoulder replacement surgery and the upper half of her arm replaced. So she needs a lot of help here in her house, and I'm happy to help her in return for the place to stay. Next week I fly back out for DC for a pre-trial conference, then trial. So this is about to come to a head, and from there I'll probably let's have that expectancy of victory. From there, when I beat the pants off the government and show this jury that it was in fact a Fedsurrection, not an insurrection, I plan to come back down here to Pensacola, help take care of Sue, find some gainful employment, and restart my life here in a new place. where it's not so liberal. While Kentucky's a red state, Louisville is most definitely a blue city, and you can tell it. You could tell it because in my 25 years of addiction and 33 arrests, I never spent a longer period in jail than 12 days. 12 days as a meth addict and a heroin addict. But I'll probably, the chances are good that I will do a year or more for peacefully and patriotically walking up to the Capitol and getting pretty much pushed in through the doors, not assaulting anyone, not breaking anything, right? Remaining peaceful, helping someone. At least I thought that's what I was doing, was helping this crisis actor. But all that said, I've had some small victories in court pro se already. Just like I talk about all this footage I've been posting all over Twitter, especially body-worn camera and CCTV footage. A group of military veterans came to me last September, and they had posed as there's this group out there, they're called sedition hunters, and they help the government hunt us all down. So these military veterans with still government jobs, with clearances they want to protect, had pretended to be these sedition hunters. They had infiltrated that group of people and gotten a hold of some databases, some archives of footage that they had. So I post all this stuff. They give it to me. I post it all over Twitter. And just a few weeks ago, I was called into court about that. The prosecution wanted me held pre-trial for the last month I had until I had my trial, right? And because I posted all this footage that is apparently, according to the prosecutor, some of what I posted is still classified as sensitive and highly sensitive, not yet been made public. Well, I got all that from a Sedition Hunter database. So after the prosecution went on and on about how I had violated national security and needed to be admonished, and I got my chance to speak, and I got to tell the judge where this came from, where it originated, and would they be bringing these sedition hunters, particularly the one at OSINT Yeti on Twitter, whose database had the most, all the body-worn cameras and CCTV footage in it. Surely they would be bringing them into court to determine where they got it, right? And why they would post matters of national security all over the internet. And they ended that hearing quite abruptly after my statements.
Do you think, Eric, that would they even know about you, and would you ever have been arrested and charged if it wasn't for your employer?
Or for my daughter.
Oh, I'm sorry, for your daughter. I'm thinking.
No, it's okay. Yeah, they would have, because I'd already been posting footage, my personal footage, on Facebook, and I'd already been kind of combating the false narrative in the comment section. So they most certainly would have found out. I've forgiven my daughter. She's my little girl. She's still my princess. I still love her. I still love her to death, and I forgive her. And we've kind of mended our relationship since then. She's still quite liberal, overboard woke mind virus liberal, not the good civil liberties kind, but the woke mind virus kind.
Yeah, there aren't many of the good kind anymore. That's for sure. Take it from somebody who that's what I was and kind of still am. But yeah, it's. Well, I'm glad you can be that forgiving, and that's wonderful, because yeah, they are our kids. But that's tough. That's tough to have. That had to be a shot to the gut, boy. I mean, that's just really, I feel for you, and I feel for you being in the position you're in, and just it's. But I guess you get strength from having talked to some of the people that are in prison, and then finding out that they seem to have a decent attitude about it.
Absolutely. That's the word, and staying in a church congregation, not because of the dogma that comes with it, but just because of the people that you get to meet and interact with, that studying of God's word really resonates and helps bring my spirits up, my ministers. But beyond that, most definitely getting to hear some of these prisoners talk sometimes and conversate with them on the phone is very uplifting. It's very uplifting because it weighs on you. It weighs on you, wondering why you're not in there with them, wondering, because a lot of their cases aren't any different than mine. Why them and not me?
Yeah.
It weighs on you. So it's good to hear their uplifting tone and that they're not defeated.
Well, we'll talk about you. I think, I had you on with Victoria White before. She made a plea deal, right?
She did. So when Victoria was on here, she was considering firing her attorney and going pro se, or she had just gone pro se, and I was considering it. And she was kind of my inspiration to go ahead and pull the trigger and go pro se. And to see her take a plea deal was a little bit disheartening, but I still love her. I love her to death. I understand that she's got, four beautiful little girls that she wants to be at home with. That the attacks on her were just too much. She's had a troubled life, right? And she got a decent deal. She ended up serving. She has to serve 8 days, and she gets to do it on the weekend. So 4 weekends, she'll do 2 days. And I believe her civil lawsuit of all of ours is probably the strongest.
Well, she faced the prospect of 30 years, didn't she?
She did. She was facing some quite serious charges. They were trying to charge her with felony assault on a federal officer for trying to reach up and just hold on and happen to grab his shield while she's having the tar literally beaten out of her. And so you feel for her, right? You feel for her to get out with 8 days, knowing they wanted to give her 30 years. That's a victory in my book.
Yeah.
Even if she took a plea deal.
That's a big difference between 8 days and 30 years. So whatever, because we only have a few minutes left. Is there anything you want to discuss that we haven't discussed?
Sure. Everybody else has done it. I'll plug myself for a minute. I do have a big civil lawsuit in the works. My expectancy is to beat the courts. I have a Gibson Go. I'll post it in your chat. I think the American Gulag's book. I think going to that letters from prisoners.us and buying that book is far more valiant and effort because it goes to far more than just me, right? Those people really do reach out and help us. The funds really are spent where they say they're spent, and I can say that from personal experience. I can say that from wanting to help. I went into Washington, D.C. last September to view the CCTV footage archive, right? I got 30 hours over a 7-day period, 7 business days. I was there like 10 days to go in and sit down and view the CCTV archive. And once it does all become public, this narrative is shattered, right? The narrative is shattered. What they're releasing now, they're doing their best to release the things that don't really show much. But when they start posting those cameras that show on the outside of the building, the camera that it faces only a wall and an emergency exit from an office, that 4 individuals on bicycles approach it, cut the feed to the camera, and then you look at the inside, what's on the inside of that door, it's an office, right? Those 4 people go into the office and start eating donuts and then walk out the main door into the building. That clip was shown by the January 6th committee. When they realized that was staged and that those people cut those cameras and that door was unlocked by staffers that were in the office before they went in, that's kind of narrative shattering. So when will they release that footage is what I want to know.
Did you see the question from Chris Graves on the screen? What does the guest think of the suicided cops of January 6th?
I think it's tragic. I think they were set up as much as we were. I think there were some bad seeds that they funneled into that tunnel. I think there were some bad ones among them. Right, obviously, that did some things that were uncalled for to help instigate the violence. I think the vast majority of them were good people there to do their jobs, and they were set up as much as we were. And they probably feel bad about the fact that they were forced into non-disclosure agreements to keep their jobs and wanted to come forward and tell the truth. And it probably weighed on them. Either that or Hillary Clinton got to them.
Yeah, it's always a possibility, isn't it? She's got a long arm. So we certainly see you have a civil lawsuit and then you have the lawsuit against Ray Epps. Those are separate lawsuits?
So I have the one against Ray Epps, and then I'm included in a class action that's got about 60 January 6th defendants that have so far signed on to it. More can sign on. And then there's another one by investigatej6.org. It's headed by A.J. Fisher. He's I believe a Proud Boy and an Air Force veteran. So that includes everyone that was there. It includes everyone that was there. You don't have to sign on to it. It's one of those types class actions where if it's won after the fact, you prove you were there, you get your cut of the settlement. But more importantly, I'm looking forward to the discovery that comes from the civil lawsuits. I think I have a good chance at getting some of that because I'm outside of DC and Utah. I took mine to Ray Epps' home district.
Well, we certainly wish you luck, and we're gonna end a few minutes early. Anything we missed? Anything else you want to mention?
Prayers. Pray for me. Pray for me above any type of financial contribution you can give me. I'll take all the prayer I can get.
Well, we certainly will do that, Eric, and we certainly feel for you, and we hope for the best. And maybe take heart from James. Maybe you can beat the system too. And thanks so much for coming on, and we'll all be thanking you and hoping and praying for you for the best. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Don.
Oh, take care. All right. Thanks everybody for listening to I Protest. We'll talk to you next week. Same time. Take care.